Cartoons aren't supposed to get the future right, yeah? But somehow, The Simpsons keeps pulling it off. Simpsons predictions are unbelievable. Think about it. Trump becoming president, a flu spreading from Asia that looks way too much like COVID, even a gag about a submarine stuck underwater that suddenly feels a little too real after the Titan disaster. It's wild. And it's not just the big stuff either. Things like smartwatches, FaceTime, Disney buying Fox, they all showed up in Springfield years before they landed in our world. The craziest part is how casual it all is. These aren't big plot points, just background jokes or quick lines the writers probably thought were throwaways. But watching them now, they hit differently. That's why today we're diving into the strangest moments when The Simpsons turned jokes into history. And once you see them all lined up, trust me, you'll never look at this cartoon the same way again. President Trump. Bart to the Future. It was the year 2000, and the episode Bart to the Future showed Lisa as president. She sat behind the desk in the Oval Office, calm and serious, when she dropped a line that seemed like pure satire. She had inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. Trump was the flashy businessman on magazine covers, the guy with the golden towers and reality TV persona. President Trump? It felt like the writers were reaching for the most absurd joke they could imagine. And then came January 2017. Donald Trump stood before the world, hand on the Bible, sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. Suddenly, that old Simpsons moment wasn't just funny, it was haunting. Seeing Lisa's fictional speech next to the real headlines gave me chills. What was once comedy had turned into history. This prediction isn't just about naming a president. It shows how satire can hold up a mirror to society, hinting at where our obsession with fame and spectacle might lead us. And the strangest part? They were right. It still leaves me wondering. Did the writers stumble onto a coincidence, or did they capture something about America we didn't want to admit at the time? COVID-19, Marge in Chains, 1993. In 1993, The Simpsons aired an episode called Marge in Chains. Buried in the comedy was a storyline that feels uncomfortably familiar today. A sick factory worker in Japan coughs into a package, and soon Springfield is overwhelmed by what they call the Osaka flu. Within days, panic spreads faster than the illness itself. People storm pharmacies, hospitals buckle under pressure, and misinformation runs wild. At one point, chaos in the streets even overturns a truck full of bees, compounding the hysteria. Decades later, in 2020, the world faced the real thing. COVID-19 emerged from Asia and swept across the globe, forcing billions into lockdowns and forever changing the rhythm of daily life. The images of frightened crowds and the breakdown of order didn't just feel like a cartoon exaggeration. They mirrored the reality outside our windows. What makes this moment stand out isn't simply that a flu-like illness appeared in both fiction and fact. It's how sharply the show captured human behavior, the fear, the desperation, and the sense of vulnerability that came with an invisible threat. That's why this prediction is remembered not just as a strange coincidence, but as a haunting reflection of how society responds when the world turns uncertain. Titan, 2023. Homer's Paternity Coot, 2006. When Homer's Paternity Coot first aired in 2006, most viewers laughed at the absurdity of Homer climbing into a tiny submarine to bond with a father he had just discovered. The sequence turns tense. Homer's sub gets wedged in the reef, the radio goes silent, and the oxygen gauge ticks lower with every breath. It was written as a cartoon drama, heightened and ridiculous, yet safely contained within animation. But then, in June 2023, the Titan submersible vanished in the Atlantic while carrying tourists to the wreck of the Titanic. For days, the world followed updates with dread, reports of lost communication, the countdown of oxygen reserves, and the desperate search across open seas. When news of the implosion broke, that Simpsons episode suddenly felt like a ghost from the past. The fear of silence, the helplessness when technology fails, the thin line between exploration and catastrophe, These were themes a cartoon once exaggerated, only to be mirrored in the starkest way by real headlines. Unlike Homer, the Titan's passengers never made it back, leaving the world shaken and reminding us how fragile human ambition becomes against the ocean's depths. FIFA corruption scandal, 2015. You don't have to live like a referee, 2014. In March 2014, The Simpsons released an episode titled, "You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee." The story followed Homer after he was unexpectedly chosen to referee matches at the World Cup in Brazil. What begins as comic chaos turns into something sharper. Homer is approached by shadowy figures who try to bribe him, promising money in exchange for rigging games. A character representing a senior soccer official is arrested mid-sentence for corruption. Just over a year later, in May 2015, the headlines broke. Swiss police, acting on behalf of U.S. prosecutors, arrested multiple high-ranking FIFA executives at a hotel in Zurich. The charges included racketeering, wire fraud, and decades of bribery connected to World Cup bids and marketing contracts. It was the kind of scandal that shook the sport to its core, leading to resignations, trials, and billions of dollars in exposed corruption. The Simpsons put Homer in the middle of a corrupt World Cup, complete with officials being dragged away in handcuffs. Then, in real life, nearly the same images appeared on news broadcasts across the world. What seemed like a comedic exaggeration in 2014 was, by 2015, a reflection of soccer's most damaging scandal in history. Disney buys 21st Century Fox, 2019. When You Dish Upon a Star, 1998. In the 1998 episode When You Dish Upon a Star, Homer becomes entangled with Hollywood celebrities Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. While the main story played out as a parody of celebrity culture, the animators added a background detail that has since become legendary. Outside the studio lot, the towering 20th Century Fox logo carried an extra line, a division of Walt Disney Company. It was meant as a joke about the ever-expanding reach of Disney, nothing more. Fast forward to December 2017, and that gag suddenly had weight. Disney announced it would purchase the bulk of 21st Century Fox's assets, including its film and television studios. By March 2019, the deal was sealed for a staggering $71 billion. Along with Marvel's X-Men and James Cameron's Avatar, the acquisition brought The Simpsons under Disney's umbrella. The image of the studio lot in Springfield had, in hindsight, predicted a massive shift in the entertainment industry. What once played as satire about corporate giants devouring each other became a snapshot of the real future. When the merger closed, news outlets revisited that old Simpsons frame, highlighting how a single background joke had captured the scale of Hollywood's most significant deal of the decade. Super Bowl Halftime Show, 2017. Lisa Goes Gaga, 2012. In the episode Lisa Goes Gaga, which aired in 2012, Springfield becomes the stage for Lady Gaga herself. The story is simple but wild. Gaga arrives in town to spread confidence and positivity, and in true Simpsons fashion, the show exaggerates her persona to the limit. She soars above the crowd in a futuristic silver costume, suspended by cables as fireworks light up the sky. 5 years later, during Super Bowl LY in Houston, life imitated that parody almost exactly. Lady Gaga began her halftime performance high above NRG Stadium, dressed in a glittering silver outfit before descending on wires to the field. The staging looked eerily familiar to fans who remembered the Springfield performance. Side-by-side comparisons quickly circulated online, showing how closely reality matched the cartoon. This overlap wasn't subtle. The color, the costume, the dramatic aerial entrance all aligned so perfectly that the old Simpsons gag now feels like a rehearsal for the real event. Kamala Harris inauguration outfit, 2021. Bart to the Future, 2000. Most of the story focused on Bart's misadventures as an adult, but one of the most striking moments comes from Lisa. She appears in the Oval Office as the newly elected President of the United States, wearing a purple jacket and a string of pearls. The outfit was meant to emphasize her maturity and leadership, a visual shift from the young girl viewers knew so well. 2 decades later, in January 2021, Kamala Harris made history as the first female vice president of the United States. On Inauguration Day, she stepped onto the Capitol steps in a bold purple coat paired with a classic pearl necklace. The resemblance to Lisa's presidential look was uncanny. Images of the two side by side quickly spread across social media, with fans and journalists alike calling it another Simpsons prediction. The connection wasn't just about fashion. Both moments carried symbolic weight. Lisa breaking barriers as a fictional female president, Harris shattering real-world ceilings as vice president. What began as a visual detail in an animated satire became a cultural echo, marking one of the clearest and most symbolic parallels between Springfield's imagined future and America's reality. Three-eyed fish in Argentina, 2011. 2 cars in every garage and 3 eyes on every fish, 1990. The episode begins with Bart fishing near the Springfield nuclear power plant. When he reels in his catch, it isn't an ordinary fish. It's a mutant with 3 bulging eyes. The town dubs it Blinky, and the discovery quickly becomes a symbol of the dangers of nuclear waste. The episode uses Blinky to satirize corporate cover-ups and political spin, as Mr. Burns tries to hide the environmental damage while running for governor. Over 2 decades later, life imitated art in the most literal way. In 2011, fishermen in Córdoba province, Argentina, caught a real 3-eyed fish in a reservoir near a nuclear power plant. The unusual catch made international headlines, not just because of the deformity, but because of the eerie similarity to Springfield's fictional mascot of pollution. Photos of the fish circulated worldwide, and almost every article referenced Blinky by name. The parallel was impossible to ignore. It began as a cartoon exaggeration of environmental hazards had surfaced in real life, this time as a biological warning sign. Just as in the episode, the fish became a talking point for nuclear safety, showing how The Simpsons' sharp satire of ecological neglect found an unsettling echo beyond television. Sweet Seymour Skinner's Bada Sus song, aired in 1994, is remembered as the 100th episode of The Simpsons. The story follows Bart accidentally getting Principal Skinner fired, leading to a temporary bond between the two. While the main plot focuses on their relationship, one cafeteria scene stood out years later. Lunch lady Doris digs through the school's freezer, and tucked among the boxes is one labeled "Assorted Horse Parts." It's quick, almost a throwaway gag, but the implication is clear. The children of Springfield might be unknowingly eating horse meat in their sloppy jokes. Nearly 2 decades later, the joke felt uncomfortably close to reality. In early 2013, European regulators uncovered that beef products sold in supermarkets and fast food chains across the UK, Ireland, and beyond contained undeclared horse meat. Frozen lasagnas, burgers, and ready-made meals were pulled from shelves. Consumers felt betrayed, governments faced public anger, and major brands scrambled to rebuild trust. The Simpsons gag and the real-world scandal connect in a striking way. Both center on the idea that what's marketed as safe, familiar food may hide something very different. It's a reminder that sometimes comedy cuts closer to reality than anyone expects. Smartwatches, 2014 to 2015. Lisa's wedding, 1995. The story follows Lisa as she visits a fortune teller who reveals her life in the year 2010. Most of the plot centers on her falling in love with a British student, but the episode is filled with futuristic details sprinkled in as background humor. One of the cleverest gags comes when Lisa's fiancé casually raises his wrist and speaks into a device strapped to it. It looks like a wristwatch but functions as a phone, an idea that felt whimsical and firmly in the realm of science fiction at the time. Fast forward almost 2 decades, and that fictional gadget became reality. In 2014, tech companies like Samsung began releasing fully functional smartwatches. A year later, Apple unveiled the Apple Watch, a device that allowed users to answer calls, send messages, and track health data, all from the wrist. What makes this prediction stand out is how specific it was. Rather than simply imagining advanced computers, the episode highlighted a watch-phone hybrid long before such technology was feasible. When Apple's smartwatch hit the market, fans quickly dug up the Simpsons clip, marveling at how a throwaway scene from the 90s had foreshadowed one of the biggest consumer tech trends of the 21st century. U.S. Curling Gold Medal, 2018. Boy Meets Curl, 2010. When Boy Meets Curl premiered in 2010, it seemed like a lighthearted detour into one of the Winter Games' quirkiest sports. The plot has Homer and Marge discovering curling by chance, quickly finding themselves swept up in the drama of the Olympic stage. In true Simpsons fashion, the story pushes the absurd. The American team, helped along by Springfield's most unlikely athletes, advances through the competition. The climax comes in a matchup against Sweden, where the United States secures an unexpected victory and takes home Olympic gold. Then came February 2018. At the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, the U.S. men's curling team stunned the world by defeating powerhouse Sweden in the final. For the first time in history, the United States earned a gold medal in curling. Fans immediately dug up that Simpsons episode, placing the fictional triumph next to real-life footage from the Olympic ice. A sport often overlooked, an underdog team facing a Scandinavian giant, and the improbable ending both on screen and in reality. The episode, once dismissed as a playful exaggeration, had mirrored the outcome of a historic moment for American sports. Higgs boson particle, 2012. The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, 1998. In 1998, The Simpsons gave us The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, an episode where Homer, struck by a midlife crisis, decides to follow in the footsteps of Thomas Edison. He throws himself into the world of invention, scribbling equations and sketches across his chalkboard. Most of the math is treated as background dressing, but one formula stood out. Years later, physicists noticed that Homer's chalkboard scribble closely resembled an equation used to approximate the mass of the Higgs boson particle. Fast forward to 2012, when scientists at CERN announced the discovery of the Higgs boson at the Large Hadron Collider. It was a breakthrough in particle physics, confirming a theory that had eluded researchers for decades. Suddenly, the old Simpsons frame resurfaced. Fans and even some physicists remarked on how similar Homer's chalkboard math looked to the real calculations behind the Higgs particle's mass. This wasn't just coincidence, it reflected the show's habit of drawing on the expertise of its writing staff. Several writers had strong academic backgrounds in math and science, which explains why the joke carried surprising accuracy. Cypress Hill with the London Symphony Orchestra, 2024. Homerpalooza, 1996. Back in 1996, The Simpsons aired the music-packed episode Homerpalooza. In it, Homer tries to reclaim his cool factor by joining a traveling festival tour that spoofs the alternative music scene of the 90s. On stage, Cypress Hill seems confused about whether they accidentally booked the London Symphony Orchestra while high. The line gets a laugh, the joke lands, and the image of a hip-hop group playing with a full classical orchestra is left as pure absurdity. Nearly 3 decades later, that absurdity took form in one of the world's most prestigious concert halls. In July 2024, Cypress Hill performed live at the Royal Albert Hall in London, joined on stage by the London Symphony Orchestra. Together they blended hip-hop beats with sweeping orchestral arrangements, reimagining tracks like Insane in the Brain with violins, horns, and timpani. The Simpsons joke had become reality. An animated throwaway turned into a cultural spectacle. Roy Horn Tiger Attack, 2003. Springfield, 1993. The episode Springfield from 1993 took aim at the booming casino industry in Las Vegas and the darker side of glitzy stage entertainment. Springfield gets its own casino, and inside, the acts mirror real-world spectacles, complete with a duo of flamboyant magicians clearly modeled after Siegfried and Roy. Their routine features tigers, elaborate illusions, and the promise of danger wrapped in glamour. The parody takes a sharp turn when one of the white tigers suddenly lashes out, mauling its trainer in the middle of the show. A decade later, that exaggerated moment turned into a chilling reality. In October 2003, Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy was critically injured on stage when a tiger named Manticore clamped down on his neck during a performance at the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas. The attack left Horn with lasting injuries and ended one of the most famous magic acts in the world. News footage of the shaken audience and the collapse of a beloved Vegas institution instantly brought back memories of the old Simpsons gag. The Simpsons had turned that truth into comedy years before, and then life reminded everyone just how fragile the boundary between showmanship and raw nature can be. Grease theft in New York, 2012. L'Art of the Dance, 1998. Most of the plot followed Lisa struggling to fit in at school, but the B story belonged to Homer. Inspired by a get-rich-quick scheme, he recruits Bart to steal used cooking grease from fast food restaurants. Their plan is ridiculous: siphon grease from fryers, sell it to rendering companies, and cash in on the liquid gold. Of course, it ends in slapstick chaos, grease spills, failed heists, and Homer covered head to toe in fryer oil. It was played for laughs, a parody of Homer's endless chase for easy money. By 2012, police departments in New York and other U.S. cities were reporting waves of grease thefts. Thieves targeted the vats of used cooking oil behind restaurants, pumping it into trucks and reselling it on the biodiesel market. The profits were high enough that organized crews ran operations across multiple states, costing the industry millions. News articles describing thieves in the night, sneaking off with grease, read like Homer's cartoon antics transplanted into reality. Once again, The Simpsons had exaggerated a human folly that, years later, proved to exist outside the world of Springfield. Fukushima mutant crops, 2011. EIEI, Annoyed Grunt, 1999. The 1999 episode EIEI, Annoyed Grunt, puts Homer into one of his more absurd entrepreneurial schemes. After a trip to the movies inspires him to become a gentleman farmer, he plants crops in the backyard. But instead of waiting for nature to run its course, Homer dumps nuclear material on his plants to accelerate growth. The result is tomako, a bizarre hybrid between tomatoes and tobacco. The fruit looks grotesque, and anyone who eats it becomes instantly addicted. On the surface, it's a wild satire about shortcuts, greed, and the dangers of tampering with nature. Years later, reality echoed that satire in a chilling way. Following the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in 2011, Japanese media reported cases of mutated produce in areas near the plant. Photos of oversized vegetables, twisted cucumbers, and misshapen tomatoes began circulating online. Scientists confirmed that radiation exposure can cause genetic abnormalities in plants. From a comedic exaggeration of Homer's recklessness to foreshadowing very real concerns about food safety and environmental health in the wake of nuclear accidents. Nobel Prize in Economics, 2016. Elementary School Musical, 2010. The episode Elementary School Musical, aired in 2010, follows Lisa attending a performing arts camp where her love for music flourishes. In one classroom scene, Martin, Database, and the other brainy kids are shown making bets on who will win upcoming Nobel Prizes. Each child has a ballot card, and among the names written down is Bengt Holmström, a Finnish economist who at the time was respected in academic circles but far from a household name. 6 years later, the joke gained new meaning. In October 2016, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics to Bengt Holmström, along with Oliver Hart, for their work on contract theory. The announcement instantly triggered a wave of comparisons to that Simpsons scene. A minor background detail from an episode focused on Lisa's artistic journey suddenly felt like a prophetic nod to the world of economics. When he actually won, the line between satire and foresight blurred again, proving how a throwaway gag could later look like an uncanny prediction of one of the world's highest scientific honors. Cannabis legalization in Canada, 2018. Midnight RX, 2005. The episode Midnight RX, which first aired in 2005, is remembered for its sharp take on the American healthcare system. Springfield residents are hit hard when Mr. Burns cancels their prescription drug coverage, leading Homer, Grandpa, and Apu to cross the border into Canada to buy cheaper medicine. Much of the story revolves around their smuggling trips, complete with disguises and late-night border runs. While chatting with Homer, Ned Flanders marvels at Canadian policies, mentioning both universal healthcare and legalized marijuana. In 2005, that sounded like typical Simpsons exaggeration. Part parody, part social commentary. 13 years later, in October 2018, that offhand remark became reality. Canada officially legalized recreational cannabis nationwide, becoming the first major Western country to do so. News coverage showed crowded dispensaries, new regulatory frameworks, and a cultural milestone that matched almost word for word what Ned had mused about years earlier. That once felt like cheeky satire turned into a moment of uncanny foresight, linking Springfield's storytelling to a defining social change in Canada. Beatles fan mail response, 2013. Brush with Greatness, 1991. In the 1991 episode Brush with Greatness, the main story follows Marge as she rediscovers her passion for painting. But tucked inside the plot is a charming subplot with Ringo Starr of the Beatles. Springfield's most patient Beatle is shown sitting in his studio working through an enormous stack of fan mail. Among the letters is one Marge wrote decades earlier as a schoolgirl. To her surprise, Ringo finally replies, praising her drawing of him. More than 20 years later, life delivered an echo. In 2013, British media reported that a woman named Barbara Besant and her friend received a reply from Paul McCartney, nearly 50 years after they first sent him a recording of themselves cheering at a Beatles show in 1963. The letter had gone unnoticed until it surfaced at a charity shop, eventually making its way to McCartney, who ensured a response was delivered. The story captured headlines around the world, resonating with fans who grew up with the Beatles' music. That had been a sweet gag about devotion and patience in Springfield became, in real life, a heartwarming reminder of the Beatles' enduring bond with their fans. NSA spying scandal, 2013. The Simpsons movie, 2007. Early in the film, the family flees Springfield and ends up in Alaska. While they hide out, the narrative cuts to a giant government surveillance center. Inside, thousands of NSA workers sit at desks, each wearing headsets, listening to private phone calls from ordinary Americans. At the time, it felt like a classic Simpsons parody, lampooning government paranoia with cartoonish excess. Then in June 2013, reality caught up. Edward Snowden, a former contractor for the National Security Agency, leaked classified documents revealing that the US government was running massive global surveillance programs. These disclosures confirmed that the NSA was monitoring phone records, internet activity, and private communications on an unprecedented scale. The revelations triggered international outrage, sparked debates about privacy and security, and reshaped how the public viewed government surveillance. The Simpsons had once again captured a mood before it fully broke into the public eye, the fear that private lives were being monitored in ways people couldn't imagine. Game of Thrones, King's Landing burns, 2019. The Simpsons, 2017. Unlike many Simpsons predictions that hide in the background, this one came as part of a full-on parody. The Simpsons, a 2017 episode, throws Springfield into a medieval world filled with sorcery and castles. The jokes fly fast. Lisa as a sorceress, Homer as a bumbling warrior. But one image lingers. A dragon circling above a town before raining fire and ash on helpless villagers. It plays as absurd comedy, a wink at the fantasy craze of the time. 2 years later, Game of Thrones unleashed one of its most polarizing scenes. In 2019, Daenerys Targaryen mounted Drogon and burned King's Landing to the ground. Audiences sat in shock as the dragon's flames tore through streets and homes, transforming the city into a smoking ruin. The Simpsons had exaggerated a fantasy cliché, and the world's biggest TV show ended with that very cliché made real. Florida Python Challenge, 2013, Whacking Day, 1993. The 1993 episode Whacking Day dives into one of Springfield's strangest traditions. Each year, the townspeople gather to celebrate Whacking Day, a festival where citizens march through the streets driving snakes into a pit, only to club them en masse. The story follows Bart and Lisa as they question the cruelty of this ritual, and eventually, with the help of Barry White's deep voice, they save the snakes from their grim fate. 2 decades later, Florida introduced an event that felt like the real-world version of Springfield's snake hunt. In 2013, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission launched the Python Challenge, inviting the public to capture and kill invasive Burmese pythons. These massive snakes, released into the wild by former pet owners, had devastated native ecosystems in the Everglades. Participants were awarded prizes for the longest and heaviest snakes, and the event quickly drew international headlines. What was written as parody in 1993 became, 20 years later, a very real campaign against an ecological threat. Ferret Poodles Scam in Argentina, 2013. Papa's Got a Brand New Badge, 2002. In Papa's Got a Brand New Badge, Springfield erupts into chaos after a massive blackout triggers a wave of looting and crime. True to his style, Homer decides the police aren't doing their job and starts his own private security company, SpringShield. Surprisingly, his team restores order to the town, and Homer basks in his new role as protector. Throughout the episode, the writers pepper inside gags about scams and the shady side of business in Springfield, poking fun at how far people will go to make a quick profit off the gullible. Fast forward to Argentina in 2013, when a surreal, real-world scam hit the news. At a local market, a man purchased what he thought were 2 toy poodles. They looked small, fluffy, and perfectly groomed, until a veterinarian later revealed the animals were actually ferrets. To make the deception convincing, the sellers had pumped the ferrets with steroids and fluffed their fur to resemble dogs. The bizarre case was widely reported, and photos of the so-called poodle ferrets quickly went viral. Ebola Outbreak, 2014 to 2016, Lisa's Sacks, 1997. The episode flashes back to Homer and Marge raising a young Lisa. While Lisa's musical journey takes center stage, there's a brief, striking moment in Bart's bedroom. Marge, trying to coax Bart into reading, holds up a book titled Curious George and the Ebola Virus. Nearly 2 decades later, Ebola dominated headlines. From 2014 to 2016, West Africa experienced the largest Ebola outbreak in history, with more than 11,000 deaths reported. Global health organizations scrambled to contain the crisis, and images of protective suits and quarantined villages filled the news. A throwaway joke in Springfield suddenly echoed one of the most serious global health emergencies of the modern era. Video chats, FaceTime 2010, Zoom, Lisa's Wedding, 1995. The 1995 episode Lisa's Wedding is one of the series' most detailed leaps into the future. In it, Lisa visits a fortune teller who shows her life years ahead, including her engagement to a British student. The writers filled the story with futuristic flourishes, self-operating gadgets, quirky inventions, and in one memorable moment, Lisa calls her mother Marge using a device no one had in real life yet, a wristwatch with a built-in video screen. The conversation unfolds casually, as if video calls were an everyday part of communication. But by 2010, Apple launched FaceTime, and suddenly people were making video calls from their pockets. Later, platforms like Zoom transformed virtual communication into an everyday necessity, especially during the pandemic. Watching Lisa chat with Marge on a watch in 1995 now feels like a prototype for what millions do routinely, whether on an Apple Watch, iPhone, or laptop. As we look back on these uncanny moments, one thing is clear. Simpsons predictions are unbelievable. From presidents and pandemics to sports upsets and billion-dollar deals, the show has blurred the line between satire and foresight in ways that still give us chills. What started as comedy in Springfield has become a cultural lens through which we watch the real world unfold. And now, stepping into 2026, the question lingers. What else from those yellow-skinned prophets might come true? Whether it's technology, politics, or unexpected twists in pop culture, The Simpsons has shown us again and again that no prediction is too outrageous to ignore. If you enjoyed this journey through fact and fiction colliding, make sure to hit like, share this with friends, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment with your favorite prediction. The future may already be waiting in Springfield.